In the darkest days of the Great Depression, when families lost everything and banks slammed their doors on the poor, one man stood against the system, not in a courtroom, but with a gun in his hand. His name was Charles Pretty Boy Floyd. To the FBI, he was a violent outlaw. To struggling farmers, he was a hero, a man who robbed from the banks that had stolen their land and, some say, gave back to the people. But was he truly a folk hero, or just another criminal lost to the violence of his time? His story is one of desperation, rebellion, and the fine line between justice and vengeance. The government saw him as a menace. The people saw him as a legend. And by the time the dust had settled, the man himself was dead in an Ohio cornfield, his body riddled with bullets. But even in death, the legend of Pretty Boy Floyd refused to die. This is the story of Pretty Boy Floyd, the outlaw who fought the banks. Long before he was an outlaw, Charles Arthur Floyd was just another poor farm boy, born in the red dirt of the South. He came into the world in 1904, in the backcountry of Georgia, but it was the hard-scrabble fields of Oklahoma where he was raised. Life was tough, and work was even tougher. Like many young men in Oklahoma, Floyd was no stranger to hard labor. His childhood was spent under the burning sun, working the land alongside his family. When oil was struck in the state, men flocked to the rigs, hoping to find a way out of poverty. But for many, including Floyd, wealth was something only a few ever got to see. By the time he was a teenager, Floyd wanted more than a life spent breaking his back in the fields. But with no opportunities and no money, he turned to the only path he saw left: crime. At just 18 years old, Floyd committed his first known crime, a small-time stick-up that barely made the papers. But it wasn't long before he got himself into deeper trouble. In 1925, he was sentenced to 5 years in prison for robbing a payroll delivery in St. Louis. For most men, a prison sentence was a dead end. But for Floyd, it was just the beginning. When he walked out of prison in 1929, the world was different. The stock market had just crashed. The banks were tightening their grip, and Charles Floyd, now hardened, now fearless, was ready to take his revenge on a system that had failed him. For men like Floyd, crime wasn't just about greed, it was survival. He fell in with a gang of bank robbers, and before long, his name was spreading across the Midwest. The jobs got bigger. The getaways got riskier, and the banks were always the target. Floyd and his crew were different from the brutal gangs of the Prohibition era. They moved fast, struck hard, and got out before the law even knew what hit them. Banks in Ohio, Kentucky, and his home state of Oklahoma all fell victim to his daring heists. Newspapers called him Pretty Boy Floyd, a name he despised. Some say it came from a remark by a flapper girl in a Kansas City speakeasy, mocking his clean-cut looks. Others claim it was given by a police officer. But no matter how the name stuck, Floyd was no pretty boy when it came to his crimes. He was quick, he was ruthless, and if the stories are to be believed, he had a habit of destroying mortgage records during his robberies. This wasn't just a crime, it was a statement. With bank documents in ashes, foreclosures disappeared, and families got to keep their homes. Whether it was fact or legend, one thing was certain. People started seeing Floyd as more than just a criminal. He wasn't robbing from them. He was robbing from the banks that had stolen their livelihoods. And in the eyes of many struggling farmers, that made him a hero. The FBI wanted to make him an example. The people wanted to make him a legend. But one thing was clear: Pretty Boy Floyd wasn't slowing down. And with every job, the law got one step closer to tracking him down. By 1933, the legend of Pretty Boy Floyd had spread far beyond Oklahoma. He was no longer just a local outlaw. He was one of the most wanted men in America, and after the infamous Kansas City massacre, the FBI was determined to bring him down. The massacre at Union Station was a turning point. On June 17, 1933, a botched attempt to free a prisoner ended in bloodshed when federal agents and police officers were gunned down in broad daylight. The FBI blamed Floyd, claiming he was one of the gunmen. But was he really there? Witnesses gave conflicting reports. Floyd himself swore he had nothing to do with it. Even historians today debate whether he was involved. But facts didn't matter to J. Edgar Hoover. He needed a name. He needed a scapegoat. And Floyd was the perfect target. With the full force of the FBI now hunting him, Floyd's life became a game of survival. He moved constantly, never staying in one place for long. Friends and sympathizers hid him, but with every passing month, his options were running out. He was fast, and he was smart. He slipped past police in Oklahoma, then vanished into Missouri. When federal agents thought they had him pinned down, he disappeared into the back roads of Ohio, but the walls were closing in. The government wanted to make an example of him. To them, Floyd wasn't just a criminal. He was a symbol of defiance, a man who had openly mocked the system. On October 22, 1934, the hunt for Pretty Boy Floyd came to a bloody end. After years on the run, dodging the FBI, slipping through the grasp of law enforcement time and time again, Floyd found himself cornered in an open field outside East Liverpool, Ohio. According to federal agents, Floyd was armed but outgunned. He made a break for the tree line, but before he could escape, bullets tore through his body. He fell to the ground, mortally wounded. As he lay dying, FBI agents claimed they questioned him one last time, asking if he had been involved in the Kansas City massacre. His supposed final words, "I'm Floyd." But just like the rest of his story, Floyd's death is surrounded by controversy. Witnesses claimed he was still alive when captured, that he was taken into custody, and then executed on the spot. One local police officer even alleged that the FBI agents shot Floyd multiple times at close range, ensuring there would be no trial. No chance for him to tell his side of the story. The government had its victory. The newspapers had their headline. But the people had lost their outlaw hero. Over 20,000 people attended his funeral in Sallisaw, Oklahoma. Farmers, families, men and women who had never met him in life came to pay their respects. They didn't see a ruthless bank robber. They saw a man who had stood against the powerful and paid the ultimate price. His legend only grew after his death. Woody Guthrie immortalized him in song, telling the tale of an outlaw who fought for the common man. Hollywood turned his story into films, and even today, his name is remembered not just as a criminal, but as a symbol of rebellion against a system that had failed so many. The question remains, was Pretty Boy Floyd truly a Robin Hood of the Great Depression? Or was he just another outlaw looking out for himself?